hello and welcome back to another thrilling edition of the Andrew Eborn Show. Now, in lockdown, more than 2.5 million dogs have gone home and become pets in the UK as a result of people being companions. And the one thing that we're missing is somebody to help train us. Well, want no more. I'm delighted that my guest today is the UK's #1 dog trainer, the fabulous Steve Mann. How are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, good as gold, Andrew. How are you?
I am absolutely incredible. I love the poster behind you. Who's that?
Yeah, nice. That's Carlos, the driver, and young Nancy as the passenger. I'm sure there's a metaphor there somewhere, but I've not had time to break into it as yet.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And I tell you, I grew up with dogs myself of every possible size, all the way right down to the little Jack Russells, all the way up. And I dug this out. This is a picture of an Irish Wolfhound that we had called Sabre.
Beautiful.
Incredible one. And they're wonderful dogs. So I was delighted to see that we were having you on the show today. How did you get started?
So, I mean, as a kid, I was back in the day when we used to have dogs knocking about on the street and just, you know, they would go home for their bed and breakfast, the same as the rest of us. But we never had a dog growing up, but that probably only fuels the fire even more so. And local dog training school opened up. I would go without a dog, like a weird little dog freak boy, and just loved being in the environment. So I'd turn up without a dog, I'd beg, borrow, or steal a dog, and really never looked back from there. I started teaching other people, and yeah, that was 30 plus years ago.
So let me get this straight. You went along to a dog training class and you didn't have a dog.
I was missing the vital ingredient. Yeah, absolutely. But do you know what? It probably, I was desperate for a dog, and rightly so. My mum and dad worked, and it wouldn't have been the right thing. But I think the actual preciousness of a dog and the rarity of a dog literally fueled the obsession even more. So, but don't get me wrong, I've made up for it since.
Oh no, I absolutely. So what was your first dog then? Which breed did you have?
First dog, German Shepherd called Alpha. Love of my life. It's all been about Alpha from here on in, really, or from there on in. Big, huge presence, German Shepherds, amazing dog.
But we had a German Shepherd, one called Dasser. And they are absolutely glorious, but they're incredibly loyal, aren't they?
Dogs are bred for different purposes. And a German Shepherd will never be an expert at any particular job, but they'll be very, very good at a huge range of jobs. And working back to a data and working back to their owner, the kind of anthropomorphic words like loyalty and all the rest of it that we throw in there, absolutely. German Shepherds have that in trumps.
No, they absolutely don't mention Trump. It's always good. In fact, Trump was the only president in history not to have a pet at the White House.
Yeah. Yes. Enough said. We don't have to dig too deep to find that.
This is what we love about these sort of things. But it's quite an incredible statistic, isn't it, Steve? 2.5 million more dogs since lockdown. Why do you think that is?
Well, do you know what, Andrew? It's a huge figure, and that's the official figure. How many more have been handed over, on motorway services and backstreet breeders? So at minimum 2.5 million. And it's my inbox is just like ding 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 with people wanting help or wanting advice, and thankfully people are looking for advice rather than going too far down the road with problems. But it's massive, and it kind of shows the value of dogs, and it shows the value of living with a dog and the therapeutic characteristics of a dog. But it's very, very important now that we repay that debt. They've got us through lockdown, and it's important that we stick with them as a team and we nurse them through, because as much as going into lockdown was difficult for us, it's been amazing for dogs because they've been with their humans 24/7. But now it's time to start stretching that umbilical cord, because people are going back to work, and a lot of these dogs, the only thing they've known is 24/7 mum or dad at home. And now that's going to change. So it's important that we nurse them through this pretty tricky speed bumps.
Oh no, and they won't understand it because they will get very grumpy, won't they? You suddenly leave them at home, and they normally can tear the place up as well, can't they? Some dogs.
Well, it's stress. It's not vengeful. You know, we've bred dogs because they're so sociable, and that's the success of the species. That's why we don't have goats or sheep or pigs or cows in our living room, but we have dogs because of that.
Speak for yourself on
huge...
that one, Steve. We had all of those in our living room.
Old McDonald over here. So one man's meat is another man's poison. We adore the fact that they bond onto us, but now it's really important that we nurse them through. And when we do leave them, we always leave them with something positive. It becomes a positive experience, got positive associations. So of course they're going to look forward to us coming home, but it's important that we make their home alone periods as positive as possible.
It is incredible, isn't it? That absolutely, they are an extension of the family. They're members of the family, really, aren't they?
And then some. You know, when I go around a family's house, I'll see lots of pictures of the dogs. I'll see very few pictures of the husband or the kids. So
it's rather like your back wall, isn't it? Do you have any other family members?
I do indeed, yeah. But it's such a commitment, and owning a dog, people don't know, but sometimes people will get a dog on a whim. But you know what? That dog and living with that dog, that commitment will dictate the clothes you wear, where you go, whether you see friends or not, whether you go on holiday or not, the car you drive. If you're a lunatic like me, the job that you end up having, it will influence so much. And it's, once people have dogs, you know, I'm not one for looking down my lawn yet and saying, oh, these people have got their pups in lockdown, they should never have done it. Good luck to them. Owning a dog is amazing. What a treat. It's just important that we keep the dogs in the home and we help these people if they do have tricky moments now, that we hold their hands. So there's lots of great dog trainers in the Institute of Modern Dog Trainers, for instance. People can always find help there. And yeah, and writing Awesome Pawsome really is to help the next generation. So when I'm dead and buried, they can run with the baton.
Well, when you're dead and buried, the dogs will come and dig you up, won't they?
Well, I'm full of bones.
Well, sounds good. Well, you have written this fantastic book, the Easy Peasy Awesome Pawsome Dog Training for Kids.
Dog training book for kids. Yeah. I've written a
easy
good
to say, isn't it? It's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it's easier to say than it was to write, believe me. But I've written a few books, and my first book, Easy Peasy Puppy Squeezy, it's still #1 on Amazon, which is fantastic, and I'm really proud of it. And I've written 4 dogs in total, but Easy Peasy Awesome Pawsome, the one for kids, is the one that's really, it's the most precious one to me, because I think it's the big investment I could have made to help as many dogs and families as I possibly can. So, and it looks great. It's the sort of book I wish I had when I was that little freaky dog boy turning up with no dog. At least it would have been nice to have a book, because for some reason a lot of dog books are quite boring, and a lot of kids' books are quite textbooky. And there's no reason for that. Owning a dog should be celebrated. It should be a joy. It should be fun. And that's really what I wanted to get across in the book. And the illustrations are amazing. And yeah, I love it. I'm really proud of it.
And rightly so. It's a fantastic book. And it's a fantastic read, not just for kids, but for adults as well. Now, in the book, you also go through some of the history of dogs and dogs ownership. Give us a quick summary of that.
Okay, well, a quick summary of the evolution of domestic dogs. Yeah, absolutely. So there's always going to be different theories, and that's how science works. Science is correct until the next lot of science. But where we are at the moment is that there was ancient cousins of what we have now, our domestic dogs. So the wild dogs, when humans first started becoming settlers and setting up camps, the wild dogs, the braver ones, would go near the edge of the camp and they would feed off the waste and what was thrown out by the human settlers. The shyer ones didn't evolve. The shyer ones stayed away from the camp and they created their own line. But the ones that were most friendly, the ones that were coming forwards, we could say the most tame, they would get all of these all these nutrients nice and easy, which helped their brain develop, which meant that they would mate with each other, and they would create a friendly dog, meet another friendly dog, would create a friendly litter, and so on and so forth. Therefore, they would come closer and closer to the camp. Then they would become adopted. Then this early settler had a bitch. This early settler had a male. they would live happily ever after, they would have their litter. So that's really how dogs evolved. It wasn't this, well, one day caveman wanted to go out hunting, so he took a wolf with him. Good luck. That's not going to happen.
I was going to say, because they were pretty ferocious, the first dogs
It's
out
not,
there, weren't they?
yeah, I mean, wolves, it's not that they're ferocious, it's that they're extremely shy. A wolf makes their living by running away from man, not by tagging along on the hunt as a bit of a team. That's not how it works. That's not how wolves make their living.
We have in sort of Roman history, you have Romulus and Remus, who were famously brought up suckling from a wolf in that sort of thing. What's the very earliest reference to somebody having a dog as a pet?
Oh, you can go right back to places in Africa. Of recent it was 16,000 years ago, but now they're saying may even be nearer to 160,000 years ago. And they're always making new discoveries. So certainly before my time.
Hey, and just before mine, even if it's only just marginally, it's going to be good. So when you look, I mean, it is really important, as you say, a lot of people have now decided to have a dog as a pet. And it is important to emphasize it is a big, big commitment. When you're looking for a dog, let's take you back a stage, first of all. When you're looking for a dog, so many to choose from, what advice would you give people?
We all go by aesthetics, and that's fine. And we're all shallow. We all like beautiful things. So I'm not going to say don't go for aesthetics, but don't go purely for what the dog looks like. We need to be aware that certain breeds are bred, working breeds, so collies, gun dogs, German shepherds, herding types. Those guys are bred to run around a field for 12 hours a day in all weather. And a lot of potential owners aren't bred to be running around fields for 12 hours a day. So it's really important that you consider what that dog needs, not only their physical outlets and stimulation, but also mental requirements as well. So it's very important that we work the dog's brain so the dog doesn't get caught in a horrible boredom cycle, because they'll end up doing the devil's work. So it's really important that whatever breed we get, that we consider the mental and physical requirements of that dog. But also I'd encourage owners to go and have a look at a rescue centre just to get a feel for it. You don't have to commit before you go there, but get a feel. Maybe an older dog is going to suit your lifestyle. Maybe that's going to be an easier transition than the stress and the trauma of toilet training and crate training and not sleeping at night and all the rest of it. So consider a rescue. If you are going to go to a breeder, go to a reputable breeder, and vote with your feet if you're looking at a breeder. So ask lots of questions. It's a buyer's market, but a lot of time people feel that it's a bit of a seller's market, and they're almost obliged to be able to hand over $1,000 for a puppy that they don't know anything about. So make sure that you can see the parents, make sure you're happy with the temperament of the parents, make sure the necessary health checks are done, and don't get the puppy on the first visit. Commit to 2 or 3 visits first and give yourself a little, because it's very hard, or it's very easy, in fact, to get wound up in the emotion of it all. And people say to me, I'm not going to get a puppy, I'm just going to go to look. Yeah, you're going to get a puppy, mate. So don't go with any cash or cards when you go and look at the litter the first time around. That's my advice.
It is great advice. The other thing which I found really helpful, Steve, is actually if you go and speak to people who've got a dog and maybe take that out for a day or over several weekends and have a look at that. For example, I'll give you one example. My son for a long time wanted a Samoyed, and they look wonderful, beautiful dogs.
Very beautiful.
We used to take it around the park and pretend it was a polar bear and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, it had a terrible yap.
Well, I suppose it's in the ear of the beholder. But yeah, I mean, commit, but don't just commit to once or twice to taking out a friend or family member's dog. Commit to 2 or 3 months of it in all weathers, regardless of what else you've got going on. Commit 100% and then make your educated decision, or commit to go to your local rescue centre 10 times in a row, 10 days in a row, and walk their dogs, or retired racing greyhound kennels. But be aware, and if 10 days is too much of a commitment, I promise you 15 years is too much of a commitment. Get a cat.
Yeah, well, and even cats live a very long time as well. And talking about the different dogs, when you're making that decision, you've obviously, you say, it shouldn't just be on aesthetics. Different dogs are good for different things, aren't they? And they do have a different lifespan. Talk to me about the different dogs and the advantages and disadvantages of some of them.
Yeah, so a shorter lifespan should never be an advantage, Andrew. Let's nip that one in the bud.
No, but it's basically.
Oh, he's a nice dog, but he's going to live for ages.
Oh no, I go back to poor old Sabre.
Yeah.
And what happens is, as I say, we had dogs of every size. So we used to have Jack Russell would live 15, 20 years or so. But
Yes.
the larger dogs, they only live for a shorter period of time. So they're only there for 7 years. So you have to work that out. And it is sometimes a factor. Don't get it because it's going to expire.
Expire. That's a nice way to put it. This dog is no more. There's lots and lots of variables. And smaller dogs do live for longer. Larger dogs, such as your Great Danes or Newfoundlands, St Bernards, they have a shorter life. In my experience, the more annoying the dog, the longer they bloody live. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
So which is the most annoying dog then?
Oh, no way am I because you don't have my inbox. I will be smashed by owners. So the most annoying dog is an untrained dog. There you go. There's your bumper sticker.
It's all there. As I say, well, growing up, we had about 30 different dogs because my mother used to do lots of rescues as well. But we had lots of horses and other things as well. But dogs were very, very special. And they do have their particular things. You have comfort dogs. You have very good dogs who are good at basically keeping you company. Some are very yappy, and you should be aware of that. And some are more aggressive than others, aren't they?
Well, I mean, the majority of aggression that I deal with is because the dog is afraid of something. And the dog has learned, like all behaviors, aggression works. So if the dog feels under threat, that dog has learned that barking gets rid of the scary thing, or lunging gets rid of the scary thing. So if a dog's doing an unwanted behavior like that, it's not so much about addressing the actual behavior. That's just a symptom. It's about addressing the cause. What's this dog afraid of? How can I change the dog's emotional response? So rather than men in hats, he's afraid of men in hats. How can I make him feel good about men in hats? Okay, I'll put on a hat and I'll give him a hot dog. I'll take off my hat and I'll stop giving him hot dogs. Put on my hat and give him a hot dog. Hot dog, hot dog. Take my hat off. No more hot dogs. You don't have to do that a lot before you put on a hat and the dog goes, yes, the buffet's open. And we start seeing positive emotional response. That's a 5-year degree in 10 seconds.
All right, I give it a 5-year degree in 10 seconds. Well, look, when I was growing up, we used to have somebody on television called Barbara Woodhouse.
God bless her. The sitter.
Exactly. And so she had her catchphrase. That was it. What's your catchphrase?
My catchphrase, I think my catchphrase might be the person your dog thinks you are.
Good heavens, that's a bit profound.
Isn't it? Yes, it's still daylight outside and I've gone all Socrates on it.
I love it. Okay, so be the person your dog thinks you are. What does that mean?
So I just think dogs are born with the potential of being optimistic. Dogs, and what a gift. What a way to wake up every morning thinking, yes, I've got another one, and I think to be born with the potential of being friendly, to be born with the potential of being optimistic, I think it's really valuable if we can confirm to the dog, yeah, you're right to think that I'm one of the good guys. You're right to think if you do that particular behavior, I'm going to give you something good in exchange. That's a fair deal. So the way I would do, you mentioned Barbara Woodhouse, and times have changed. Back in the day, I think dog training used to feel very much like it was you versus the dog. I would hear phrases like, oh, wouldn't let him get away with that. And even as a kid, that seemed nuts because I'm like, well, these people want their dog. They've chosen to live with their dog. Dog training should always be, dog training is a team game. It should be you with the dog. So if the dog is doing a behavior that you don't want them to do, let's say yapping, as you said earlier, let's reinforce them for doing a mutually exclusive behavior. Let's reinforce them for bringing the toy to you when someone's at the front door. That's mutually exclusive. They can't hold their toy and bark at the same time. That way, everybody's happy. Punishment works. Punishment stops the behavior, but it always comes at a cost. It always comes with some sort of fallout. It always comes out with some negative emotional association. So it's a very, we shouldn't use pain or fear in the name of training. So it would be much better to know the behaviors that we do want and heavily reinforce those behaviors. And we'll fill the dog's day, so there's no time to do the unwanted behaviors. Sounds easy when I don't have a dog. That's why I write books.
No. Do you have a dog at the moment?
No, I'm a cat man. Yeah, I do. I can't stand dogs. But yeah, I have 5 dogs.
5. What have you got?
So they're all rescue dogs. So I've got Nancy, who's a little maybe Chihuahua cross Jack Russell. I've got Pablo, who's a Staffy. Summer, who's a Lurcher. Spider, who's a Whippet, and Ash, who's a German Shepherd.
And who named them, or were they named when you got them?
They were all strays. So yeah, I had the joy of christening them myself.
There you go.
And of course,
if you come up with those extraordinary names.
You know what? So the names that I've given them, that's their names, but they've all got names that I use inside the house that are much more long-winded. So, Nancy is actually called Nancy Muscles, as far as I'm concerned. Ash is called Ashelina Ballerina. They've all got... Summer is called Summer Long Socks. I've no idea why. But, yeah, that's their street names, the first names that I gave you.
And wholly inappropriate. Summer is the last time that you want to wear long socks.
Well, there you go. Maybe, yeah, if you're not wearing anything else.
I bet she's a bit confused, Summer.
She is in this weather, yeah.
So always interesting stuff. Okay, so we've done our research. We've decided on the breed, or maybe the crossbreed, or the
yes
that we want, and we've checked out and made sure we understand the responsibilities. What's the first thing we do when we start training the dog?
So I think first is to make sure that your house is as pup safe as possible, or as dog safe as possible. Make sure that you've got time in your daily schedule that you can dedicate 100% to the dog. And I think, okay, I'm a dog trainer by trade. How I make my living is teaching people how to get behaviors. But all of that is worthless if we don't focus on how the dog feels. So how the dog feels is more important than what the dog does. If the dog feels, as I said earlier, safe, optimistic, getting behaviors is really easy. If the dog feels insecure, unsafe, has no relationship or trust in you, then behaviors are just on thin ice, not important. So the first thing is to really, if I was to take on a dog now, I would just think, right, I'm going to play with this dog every day. And I would dedicate my time with this dog to playing and hand feeding. A few days of playing and hand feeding, that particular dog is going to know that this monkey called Steve is worth hanging out with. He's got good stuff. He knows how to bring the fun. So appropriate play is massively underutilized in living and owning a dog, because we have dogs, for instance, Pablo, my Staffordshire Bull Terrier, he loves to grab and bite and do tugging games. It's not a case of, is he going to do that? It's a case of, when is he going to do that? He can either do it with me constructively, or he'll go self-employed and do it on the tablecloth or other dogs' collars or cushions or whatever. So it's important, you mentioned earlier about breed specifics. Know what that individual dog likes and swap those activities with the behaviors that you like. So I'm going to be playing with my dog. Tomorrow when I go to the field and I've got the toy, the dog's like, yeah, we're going to do that play game. And then I'm going to say sit. And when the dog sits, good, then we start playing. And then dog will leave the toy, and then I'm going to say down. And when the dog says a down, good, and then we'll start playing. So know what the dog likes and swap that for the behaviors that you like.
So it's basically you're bribing the dog each time.
You're not bribing. I'm guessing you're not doing this show for free. If you are, if it's purely an altruistic project, correct me, but we all work for a living. Every animal works for a living. We do stuff in order to get stuff. If we did behaviors and there was no reinforcement, we would become extinct in about 1 generation, 2 for the stupid ones. There's no sense in doing behavior if there's no reinforcement. We do behaviors either to get something or to run away from bad stuff. Okay, so the way to get the behaviors that you want is to swap it for what the dog likes. That way you're happy and the dog is happy. And if you reinforce the behaviors today, chances are the dog's going to offer them to you tomorrow.
Absolutely. If I do this, then I get a reward or whatever it is, so I'll do it again. So that makes sense.
There you go. What gets treated gets repeated.
Oh, look at you. There's your catchphrase.
I know. There's another T-shirt.
That was a bit better than the other one you came up with.
Yeah, that was a bit more light-hearted, wasn't it? Yeah, we'll stick with that one. Write it down.
Always a thrill. So you've done that. So you've got these exercises then. So talk us through, because in your book, what I love about it, you talk in a very clear way, the very first exercise about getting a dog to sit. Talk me through that.
So I think sit generally tends to be the software. Whenever I meet anyone with a new dog, sit tends to be the bit of software that they've uploaded already. You know, people get a puppy and immediately sit to the point of extinction. So much sitting. However, getting a dog to sit and then is one thing, but getting a dog to sit with good duration, getting a dog to sit where there's countless distractions, or getting a dog to sit at a distance from you. So what I call the 3Ds. We can get any behavior quite easily, but it's about proofing the behavior and elongating the distraction, the distance, or the duration. So if your dog sits, no matter what else is going on, chances are you've got 95% of your problems are avoided. So it's a super important, valuable exercise to teach. And really we could just lure it, just go back to old Barbara Woodhouse and just a treat on the nose, lure their head. If the head comes up, their butt will go down. That's just mechanics. Yep. But then that's only the starting point. So then we need to be doing it without food. We need to be doing it purely on the verbal cue. And then we need to be doing it at various different distances in as many different places as possible, daytime, nighttime, inside, outside. So it becomes a really reliable, robust behavior.
And what's incredible at the moment, Britain's Got Talent, they all of a sudden, Simon Cowell, the old chum, he says, we need more dog acts. And some of the things these dogs do are absolutely incredible. How do they train these? Do they use the same mechanism, just slightly more complicated?
Yeah, it's all the same mechanism. It's basically, here's the deal, if the dog can do the behavior and they're motivated for the reinforcement that they're going to get for doing that behavior, then they'll do it. No dog will ever be, there's no such thing as a stubborn dog. I hear people, they say to me, oh, Steve, my dog's stubborn. Dogs will never say to themselves, I know what you want me to do. I want the potential reinforcer, but shan't. A dog would never do that. Ego and pride and all of that junk, that's for us humans. Dogs are much cleaner animals than that. They don't mask themselves in all of that. The thing about stuff like with Britain's Got Talent, or any show with a dog, I'm all for people displaying how awesome dogs are. I'm all for that. But to me, it's important that they only do natural behaviors, a physical behavior that a dog would do naturally anyway. So I'm not for anything elongated where it's an unusual physical position for the dog to be in, because I think that's a little bit unhealthy.
And it is that balance, isn't it? Where you talk about circuses are closing down, where they used to have elephants doing all sorts of tricks and standing on their hind legs and things like that. And cats would roar. What's the difference?
So there is a balance. And I think as soon as you shift from a punishment orientated way of training to a positive reinforcement, that's a massive, massive difference. Circus animals are generally performing, they'll do that behavior so they avoid something nasty. Whereas a dog doing a behavior that's been brought up on positive reinforcement, they're doing that behavior so they get something good. So yourself, say you're back at school and you're sat at your desk and you're having to do something to avoid detention, that's a different mentality than doing something to get a gold star. And if you get a gold star and you like gold stars, you're more like, you want to do that behavior again. Whereas an animal that's been taught to perform with punishment, as soon as that behavior is performed, the animal isn't saying, oh, can I do that behavior again for you? To again avoid something bad. Avoiding something bad is just rubbish. It's no way. And we have dogs because of the relationship. We don't have dogs so we can train them. That's just a byproduct. So it might as well be a byproduct of a positive relationship, as opposed to me versus dog. Me, Tarzan, you dog should be long gone.
Me, Tarzan, you, dog. Absolutely. I think that certainly is long gone. But it's a positive training, and they're doing it out of delight because they're going to get a reward rather than fear. Is that it in a nutshell?
That's it in a nutshell, and that's how to be honest, the majority of my career was training dogs via training people. So how I train dogs is also how I would train people. I want to find out what do they want, and I'll show them how to achieve it so they get their reinforcement. Because if the owner gets reinforced, they're going to do more of the training. So then the dog gets more reinforcement. So it's really important that we don't, as a professional trainer, I don't just look at the dog. I look at the owner first. I look at that conduit first, and I need to know if the student, whether it's a dog or an owner, if the student understands the benefit to them, they'll do the behavior. So it's really important that I don't just tell them what to do. That's some Stanley Milgram experiment. Do it because I said so. That's ooky. That's not healthy. It's do this because. So as long as I can say a lot of becauses, and I can get the benefit across to the owner, what's in it for them, then we're all on the same page.
And that makes sense. And you also talk about body language and how important that is. Talk to me about that.
So, body language is important. It's important for human to human interaction as much as human to dog and dog to human. And there's a lot of similarity. So mammals behave like mammals. So generally, if a mammal wants to threaten, everything that will come up and forward and square, facial features as well as shoulders and chest. So a lot of square, a lot of symmetry in a threatening type behavior. So that's on one axis. On the other axis, if one of us mammals are afraid, we generally get smaller, we divert our eye contact, we turn our body 45 degrees. If I've got, let's say, nasty intentions as I approach you, Andrew, as I approach you, I'm going to look directly at your eyes, I'm going to walk in a dead straight line. Whereas if I was going to approach you and I had friendly intentions, there'll be a lot of bend in my body. I'll probably have my feet attended to. There'll be a bend in my knee, which will put my hips on an angle, which puts my shoulders on an angle. And when I look at you, I'll blink or divert my gaze within every 2 seconds. And as I approach you, I'll approach on a crescent. And it may be subtle, but that crescent will be there. And we've invented handshaking because that exaggerates that crescent. And that makes me tip my shoulder and lean my head down as we shake hands. Dogs sniff butts. But again, that crescent, that flexibility in the spine, it's all there. It's just that a dog's spine is on the horizontal and we're on the vertical. But I think for humans, it's valuable for us to assess our own. We're animals before we're humans. We get body language once we just shut up for a minute and get rid of all of this facade of sarcasm, etc. So if we can just understand our own body language, it's very similar with dogs. And it's important that, us understanding what dogs are saying is one thing, but the most important thing is that we respond and we accommodate and we listen. So communication doesn't start when someone speaks, it starts when someone listens.
What was that?
And communication doesn't start when someone speaks, it starts when someone listens.
What was that?
Very good.
He's wide awake. I love it. So, you brought up the subject, Steve, about sniffing butts. Why do they do that?
Because dogs, us monkeys, we're very visual. We take in, so someone will say, "Oh, I've socialized my puppy. He's seen this, he's seen that, he's seen buses, he's seen people." But they never say to me, "What does the dog smell?" And the dogs, a vast amount of the dog's brain real estate is dedicated to their olfactory system, which is smell. So the world of scent. So dogs live in a world of scent. So a dog sniffing another dog's butt is going to, basically that's their Facebook profile. It's going to tell them their age, their sex, their health, their breeding status. So much stuff will be downloaded through the nostrils when the dog is sniffing another dog, or even sniffing where another dog has peed. So they're just walking along, reading their pee mail, the same as we walk along looking at our phones. It's a world of information through the nose.
So the butt is basically the Facebook for dogs. That's what you're saying?
The face butt for dogs.
The face butt for dogs. I love it. There's your catchphrase. We're going to get loads of these by the end of this. It sounds rather good. But a friend of mine, a chap called Colin Singer, he runs something called Wagtail, and they do lots of these dogs, and they do the rescue dogs, and they do the patrol dogs, and they're all incredibly trained because of their sense of smell to try and look out things. So, for example, you might go and find endangered newts, and a particular dog will be trained to find these endangered newts and respond accordingly. Why are dogs so good at that?
So dogs are so good at that because that's how they make their living. Traditionally, that's how they make their living. So us humans, with our sight, we filter reds, blues, and yellows. Dogs only filter blues and yellows, so they're kind of colorblind to reds, because of what they've done is they've sacrificed that part of the brain power for visual color spectrum, and they've moved it onto the olfactory side of things. So their ability is much bigger. A bird's visual color spectrum is okay. If ours is 6 inches, that color spectrum on a piece of paper, a dog's might be 3 inches. A bird's would be 40 foot. A bird will. It's much more important for a bird to know whether that berry is ripe or poisonous, what ones to avoid, what ones to eat. So it's important for a bird to have that huge color spectrum. It's not important for dogs. Dogs don't have a lot of taste buds. Pretty much, dogs are scavengers. They'll try anything once. So the color isn't so important. Taste isn't so important. But for hunting, for catching prey, for predatory type behaviors, it's important that they can smell the prey first, and then they go into the chasing, grabbing, biting, and the various different individual parts of the predatory motor pattern.
I know, fascinating stuff. But how on earth? I mean, I've always wondered this, because people used to say that dogs only saw in black and white, and now you're telling me it's only in blues and greens. How on earth can you tell that?
So basically, with that, okay, there's no final way to put it. Let's imagine our wacky scientists, and they've got a cadaver of a dog, and they've got a dog's eyeball. Basically, you can shine a torch through it, and you can see what gets filtered. It's all to do with rods and cones and shining lights through various body parts. Don't knock it till you try it. Okay,
so that's how they did it. So why do they used to think it was in black and white?
Because we're always learning. You know, that's yeah. We're always learning. They used to think the world was flat.
Oh, fascinating stuff. Well, you also talk about different tricks. What's the hardest trick to teach a dog?
I wouldn't say anything's any harder than anything else, to be honest with you, Andrew. I think it's important that if we've got a final target behavior that we want to teach a dog, we don't start on day one trying to get to that, because it's far too large a leap. What's important is, if we know what we want to train the dog to do, then we break it down into small little slivers. So we break it down into small little criteria steps, and then we get to level 1, we reinforce that, and now we go from level 1 to level 2, and then we get to that. And so it's always the same tiny little step until we get to level 10 or level 20 or level 30, depending on how much we've broken down the complete exercise. So we shape the behavior in tiny little steps. It's a little bit like playing a hot cold game. So you know, when your partner comes into the room and you want them to touch the door, you don't say anything to them, but you go hot, hot, hot as they get nearer, and as they walk away, you go cold, and then you go hot, boiling hot, and then they touch the door. So it's about those tiny little steps, and that's what's important. Where people fail is they just keep trying to jump for that final target behavior, and it's just far too much too soon. They're trying to do degree level before they've done their 11 plus.
And what's the thing you're most proud of then, in terms of how you've taught a dog? What's the most impressive thing that your dogs can do?
Do you know what? I'm not, I wouldn't hold myself up to say that the most impressive thing is that I've taught a dog to do a behavior. I think the most impressive thing, or certainly the most important thing for me, is that I've taught nervous dogs to feel safe, and I've taught sad dogs to feel happy, and I've taught pessimistic dogs to be optimistic. That's much harder to measure, but it's much more valuable than a spin or a twist or, dare say it, Britain's Got Talent.
Oh, no, okay. Well, I get very clear views on that from you. I mean, a lot of people say, well, two of the biggest problems, I guess, that people have are dogs that bite and dogs that bark a lot. How do you deal with those?
Okay, so again, we would need to look at the motivation. Why is the dog doing it? Is the dog doing it because he's afraid? Chances are, yes. How can we change the emotional response? Or it might be something, it may just be, let's say the dog barking at the doorbell. So what happens is the puppy's in a house or the dog's in a house, the doorbell goes, and then there's this amazing chemical brain bath of excitement by the front door. And then tomorrow the doorbell goes, and then the visitors turn up and there's this amazing chemical brain bath again. You don't have to do that too often before the dog is going nuts, even when he hears the doorbell on EastEnders on TV go. So that's because the dog has made an association. So I would recommend that owners change that association. So the training would look something like, I'd have my partner outside and I'd be in the living room with the dog and I'd say on my phone, right, go on, ring the bell now. And when they ring the bell, the dog might go nuts, but I'd get up and I'd go to the back of the house real slow and I'd put 3 or 4 pieces of cheese by the back door. And the dog would go, I don't know what's going on there, but he'll go and have his cheese. And then I'll sit down again. And then they'll ring the doorbell again. And the dog will go and run to the front door, but I'll just slowly get up and I'll put some cheese by the back door. Maybe the 3rd or 4th time the doorbell goes, now the dog will start looking at me. Well, where's Steve? And I'll go to the back of the house. By the time I've done that 20 times, maybe over the course of 2 or 3 days, the doorbell goes, the dog runs to the back of the house because the dog is now anticipating something different. We've changed the emotional response. And also the doorbell is now a cue for something else. The doorbell is now a cue for cheese at the back of the house. So because the emotional response is different, we have no fuel behind the barking. The dog is predicting something different is going to happen. So we change the emotional response and then we reinforce the behaviors that we do want. So then the doorbell goes, the dog goes to the back of the house. I open the front door, let the visitor in, and then I say, come on, Pablo, here you come, mate. And when he comes, say hello. Now Pablo gets to say hello to the visitors as a consequence for him running to the back of the house when the doorbell goes. So we always look at the emotional response first.
And so you've changed that emotional response. So what happens, Pablo in this example, what happens when Pablo suddenly realized, well, hang about, they've knocked on the door, I've gone to the back of the house, but there's no cheese.
Because we're working through, as I said earlier, those criteria. So to start off with, the cheese is there instantly. Now we're working on one of our Ds, which is duration. He goes to the back of the house, waits 2 seconds before the cheese appears. Next time he goes to the back of the house, he waits 5 seconds, and then the cheese appears. Or we change the reinforcer. So he goes to doorbell goes, he goes to the back of the house. And because he loves saying hello to people, which is why he was barking in the first place, when he goes to the back of the house and the visitor comes in, I say, Pablo, come and say hello. Pablo runs and says hello. So now Pablo is, as a consequence for him running to the back of the house, he gets to say hello to the visitor. So he's getting what he wants. We're getting what we want. And we're not having to use any punishment or getting into this crescendo of trying to outshout each other.
So it's the association, which basically, so you're changing the association from something which is negative into something which is positive, and that changes the behavior.
Yeah, so it's very Pavlovian. Yeah,
exactly. I was just going to bring up good old Pavlov and his dog and the ringing of the bell. Talk to me about that experiment.
Okay. So Pavlov was originally, it's a very pop version, but Pavlov was originally his experiments were originally focused on digestion and enzymes. So it looked very medieval, but he'd have dogs on his benches with tubes going into their stomachs. And when it was feeding time, or how he was getting the dogs to salivate, so he could get the saliva to study, is they would blow meat powder into the dog's nose, and the dogs would salivate in anticipation of the food. So he wanted to see if he could control that behavior, but without the presence of the meat powder. So he would ring a bell, deliver the meat powder, dog would salivate. Ring a bell, deliver the meat powder, dog would salivate. Ring a bell, deliver the meat powder, dog would salivate. With enough repetition that at any time of day, in any environment, he could ring a bell and then the dog would salivate in anticipation of the meat powder coming. So the association had been made. So he paired the bell with the meat powder. With Pablo barking at the front door, originally the bell was paired with visitors. We changed it so then the bell was paired with cheese at the back of the house. So because we changed what followed, we also got a different emotional response, and as a byproduct, we got a different behaviour.
Fantastic. Okay, so biting then. Talk to me about how you stop dogs biting.
Again, we would look at why is the dog doing it. Behaviour happens because it gets reinforced. Is the dog biting because the dog wants to put space between their self and the person? Chances are that's the main fuel behind the fire. That's the main trigger. So we would look at why has the dog got a bad experience? Has the dog had some sort of trauma with visitors to the house? Is it worse here than it is there? How can we change the association? So it's about changing the association. If the dog has got a negative association to a man walking along the street, we need to change it to a more positive association. And food is fantastic at doing that because it's what's called a primary reinforcer. We all need food. It naturally feels good to have food. But we need to work at appropriate distance. It's never about fighting fire with fire. So if the dog is uncomfortable with people 5 meters away, our starting point would be a person 50 meters away, stationary, standing sideways on, not even looking at the dog. And when that person appears, we're feeding the dog. When that person disappears, we stop the food. Then tomorrow, person appears at 45 meters, food, person disappears, we stop the food. With enough repetition that when the person appears, not only has the dog got a positive emotional response, but as a byproduct, the person appears, the dog feels good because it's anticipating the food because we've paired it, much like Pavlov, but also the dog now looks to the owner for the food and says, "Oi, where's my food? Strangers have appeared, where's my food?" So we've got a positive emotional response, but also we've got a mutually exclusive behaviour. The dog isn't barking at the person or biting the person because the dog is busy looking at the owner.
Is there any dog you can't train?
No. No. If it's physically possible for the dog, then we can train them. As I said, too often people say, "Oh, he's untrainable. Oh, he's stubborn. Oh, he's da-da-da." Or certain breeds are more difficult than other breeds.
Which are the difficult ones?
No, this is what people say, but that's not the case. That the trouble is, someone might try and teach a Samoyed the same way they would teach a Labrador.
Right.
You get a sit from a Labrador and throw a tennis ball. The Labrador go, "Oh, cool, I'll go and get it," because they love to hold stuff in their mouth. The retrieving is, they do what it says on the tin. They love to retrieve. So they'll do the behavior as an opportunity to go and retrieve something, to do what they're wired to do. Whereas you get a Samoyed to sit and you throw a tennis ball and you say, "Fetch," there's a good chance a Samoyed's going to say, "You get it, mate." Because that's not what they're bred to do. That's not what's in their wiring. So, but the opportunity to maybe chase something is going to be more valuable than the opportunity to pick something up.
And so it's interesting about those sort of breeds, aren't they? Because some of the breeds are more intelligent than others. I had a beautiful Irish red setter called Sherry. And I have to say, she was as beautiful as she was a bit dumb.
Well, not many of us are blessed with looks and brains, Andrew, so we can't talk down to them too much. But again, red setters, Irish setters, I adore, and people will say, yeah, they're a bit dumb, but they're not. What they love to do is to hunt. So give that dog the opportunity to hunt and sniff in exchange for the behaviours that you want more of. You're on the same page. You'll get whatever behaviours you want. Control access to the good stuff and you'll control the dog, but you need to be swapping one with the other. So, red setters, Gordon setters, English setters, any kind of setters do sometimes get labelled as being not the brightest, but, it's I think it's an Einstein saying, if we judge a fish on his ability to climb a tree, it's going to grow up thinking that he's an idiot. It's all to do with they're bred for different purposes. We're bred for different purposes. There's different things that we're good at, and that's what makes not only dogs amazing, but individual breeds amazing.
Absolutely, and a joy of discovery and all of that. House training. Talk to me about house training. How do you do that?
So house training, I think I'm a big fan of creating some sort of den area for your puppy. So a nice safe area where puppy gets their toys and their chews and gets their dinners. It's a nice safe environment, because ultimately the last place an animal's going to want to wee and poo is where they sleep and eat. You know, that's all animals. However, when puppies are born, they physically don't have the physical ability to hold on. So there's always going to be a certain amount of training. But it's important that owners are very, very vigilant and that they give their puppy the chance to get it right. So after waking, after playing, after eating, after any kind of excitement in a house, it's really important that the owner picks up their puppy, brings them outside onto the grass and waits. And when puppy does go to the toilet outside, that's when the chicken and the cheese and the treats and all the good stuff happens. And then bring them back inside again. It won't take long for the puppy to realise, if I pee here, I get nothing good. But if I pee outside, it's party time. Puppies will soon start saying, I need to go to the toilet out there, please, where the dividends rain from the sky. So again, reinforce the behaviour that you do want. Be very, very good on your control and management. So using in Easy Peasy Puppy Squeezy, I'll talk about a den wizard. So I create a really positive den area for the puppy that can really help accelerate and make toilet training as stress-free as possible.
Fantastic. And how do you stop them chewing up the furniture?
Give them something better to chew. There's, it's never a case of will my pup chew or not. It's just a case of what will they chew. So good control and management. Don't leave them in with the antique furniture unattended with nothing better to chew, because human toddlers, they have to touch everything. That's how we find out about textures and what's edible and what's not edible and everything else. Puppies don't go around touching everything. They need to go around biting everything. This squeaks, this doesn't squeak. This feels good when I'm teething. Sometimes they need to bite something hard because they've got 48 adult teeth pushing out those 28 puppy teeth. So it's important that we give them that pain relief. So we offer them something soft, something medium, something hard to chew. And I say to owners, your puppy's got say 4 hours worth of chewing every day. It's up to you what they chew. So you can give them appropriate chews, or they can go self-employed. But it's your responsibility, not the puppy's responsibility, to know the difference. It's all chew toys to puppies until you tell them otherwise.
So it's an education. You join people in that sort of education, just as you would train a child, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Dogs are easier though. Dogs don't get peer pressure.
Ah, yes, absolutely. And talk about peer pressure, and lots of celebrity clients have come your way. How did that come about?
It come about because it's what I do. It's thankfully there's it works with a lot of recommendations. Certainly the
first celebrity who came to you.
Possibly Graham Norton, actually, way back when. He used to have a rescue dog called Bailey that he got from Dogs Trust, and I used to meet Graham. I was training up at Hyde Park, in fact, because his dog used to go rampaging through all the picnics on Hyde Park. Graham used to follow 50 yards behind, giving out £20 and apologising. So Graham and his dog were lovely, and yeah, that was a good few years ago. But they're all celebrities to me, Andrew.
Oh, they're all celebrities. Lorraine's also engaged your services. Talk to me about her dog.
Yeah, so Lorraine Kelly, she's got a little border terrier called Angus, really sweet dog. Border terrier called Angus, a Scottish. Everything had to be as Scottish as possible. And I've been on Lorraine's show a few times, and her and Angus have got a fantastic relationship, and she's really. I really like the way Lorraine is with her dog, because they're pals, they're mates. There was never any kind of huge pressure to get the dog to do this, that, and the other. Even on a TV show, Angus will be hanging about. So when we talk about socialization for a puppy, it was amazing for him, because he was seeing lights and people and clapping and everything else in a very short period. So he was very well-rounded, very robust dog, very, very quickly, because Lorraine gave him the opportunity to experience lots of different facets of life very early on in his life. and it will stand him in good stead for the next, God willing, 15 years.
Theo Walcott.
Theo Walcott, yeah, Theo. I had black German Shepherd called Diesel, and yeah, really nice. I like training them because I like playing with the dogs, and I like playing dog stuff, especially with German Shepherd. So you're doing your raggy and your, that kind of hands-on, and being an athlete, he got it. He moved well. I know when someone's going to be a good dog trainer, even a professional dog trainer. They could walk in the room, but I know if they're a good dog trainer or not by the way that they move. The same way I think that other people would know if they're a good dancer or a good stage performer. A pal of mine, he teaches mixed martial arts, and the way I teach and the way he teaches very, very similar, very, very similar. Very different topics, but he does cage fighters and all the rest of it. But you can tell by the way someone moves, the way that they own their space, the way that they accommodate other people's space. And that's the same whether you're fighting someone doing jiu-jitsu or whether you're ragging with a Rottweiler. It's the same, very, very similar movements. It's a dance. It's all a dance.
Oh, we love it. Brian Blessed, tell me he had a little Chihuahua.
Brian didn't. Brian Blessed had lots of animals. He had a lot of. He used to say to me the only thing he owned was the trousers he was stood in. I didn't believe him. And he reckons all the rest of his money was spent on rescue animals. But when I worked on the Underdog show, he worked with a really nice kind of a pointer cross called Dougal. And yeah, Brian was. Now, Steve, how do you teach your dog to focus on you? Because the dog I was working with was really, really, focus. That's eye contact's the first exercise that I teach really, and Dougal wasn't very focused. So I was saying, right, Brian, what I need you to do is stop, say nothing, just be really, really quiet, just have a handful of treats, and you're going to hold it out to the side and let Dougal bite your hand and let Dougal figure it out. But the second Dougal looks at you, then you're going to say good and give him a treat. So Dougal learns, looking at Brian makes the good stuff start. But don't say anything, let Dougal own it, give Dougal the agency. Okay, Steve, yeah, got that. So anyway, he puts his hand out, and as soon as he puts his hand out, right, out you go, brilliant, right, say nothing. Okay, say that. Oh, Dougal, aren't you beautiful, Dougal? Oh, what a beautiful beast. What a beautiful beast. What a beautiful creature. And then all the time, I'm like, and he's like, is that it, Steve? I'm like, it's really close, Brian. Do exactly that, but say nothing. Completely zipped until, okay, right, away you go, Brian. Puts his hand out. Oh, doogie. Like, okay. I'm about 10 times. And then I'm like, he says to me, is that it, Steve? Is that it? I said, that's perfect, Brian. Brilliant. Well done, mate. Good luck. The man's an absolute force.
An absolute force of nature. That's what I love about it. Adrian Charles as well. You worked with him very closely. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, very recently. Adrian's got a dog called Tito. He contacted me and we did a couple of one-to-ones, and Adrian's lovely, and he wrote a really nice piece in the Guardian actually about our training, which I was delighted with. It was really nice, and Adrian gets it as well with the kind of being positive and how to deal with unwanted behaviours, how to promote the more positive behaviours that you want. Really, really nice. We did a lot over Zoom throughout lockdown, and hopefully I'll hook up with him soon, and we can go out and just see if he can walk the walk.
Walk the walk and talk the talk was fantastic. Yeah. You also worked very closely with Scott Mills. How did that come about?
So yeah, Scott Mills. So Scott got a puppy over lockdown called Teddy. And we were doing similar to ourselves now, Andrew. We were doing over lockdown. I did a lot. Well, it was really an opportunity for me because I'm normally teaching at conferences and seminars, and I'm teaching professional dog trainers. I'm not that hands-on with dogs. So when lockdown came around, I just kind of, it was an opportunity really, because the world stopped. It was an opportunity for me to be doing Zoom consultations with new puppy owners and a real treat. So I hooked up with Scott. We started doing a consultation, and we were about 10 minutes, and I got on very well with Scott instantly. And after about 10 minutes, we're chatting about the dogs and the training, and he he said, this should be a podcast. He said, why are we doing this just between the pair of us? He said, there's so much like knowledge. And he said, there's so many people in the same boat as me. I'd love to be able to share and help other new dog owners. So that's what we did. So we created a podcast. So it's called Pup Dates. And there's 20 episodes out. We record them really fast because both of us, as you can now guess, rabbit on. So we're just like, right, we draw an in-breath at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and then we just start. And then, we're 10 episodes in before we know it. So we've done 20 episodes. They're nice, short, digestible episodes. So we'll go, right, toilet training. Okay, next episode, body language. Next episode, chewing. Next episode, recall. All the stuff that he knows it's what people want because it's what he wanted. And I know it's what people want because it's cyclical. I hear the same questions over and over again. So it was an opportunity to get it out to as many people as possible. And yeah, thankfully it's really, really popular. So, and I really enjoyed doing it, and I know other people enjoy listening to it. So yeah, I'm really, I really do like Pup Dates. The latest block of 10 episodes went out the end of last week.
And as you said, there are topics that keep coming up. I think I've covered most of those. Have I missed any out yet?
You've been extremely comprehensive.
Hey, that's all we like.
No stone unturned.
Hey, I think fantastic. So 100,000 dogs you've trained, is that right?
Yeah, and that's going back a little bit. So yeah, personally, yes. But the IMDT, the company that I formed to train dog trainers and behaviourists, we get over 4,000 professional dog trainers each year come through.
Institute of Modern Dog Trainers.
The Institute of Modern Dog Trainers, yeah. So we're the largest membership and education centre for dog trainers and behaviourists, and we've got, we're based in the UK, but then we've got learning centres in South Africa, in Australia, and in China. So we're spreading our wings, and it's all just about trying to get our tentacles to as many dogs as possible. And keep everyone on the right track. I like the
idea you're dealing with every possible animal and blobby thing at the bottom of the sea, from spreading your wings to tentacles everywhere. But no dog references to dog.
I know, I'm like Johnny Morris.
Knocking your leg at whatever, it's got to be good. So tell me then, a 30-year glorious career. I love the book. It's accessible starting at any age, but as I say, it's very, very readable. It's a great read for adults and kids. Looking back at that 30 years, what's been your biggest regret?
Ooh, fantastic question. My biggest regret. Wow, that's such a good question. I think my biggest regret, but you know what? It's just part of, we all evolve, and what I love about dog training is, I will look back 5 years, in 5 years' time, I'd hope to look back at this interview and I'd go, bloody hell, what was Steve talking about? That's not how to do it, because it's ever evolving. But I think when I was younger, I used to look at the world from the owner's point of view. And I think I'm a much better trainer as soon as I start looking at the world from the dog's point of view. So I think I would have liked to have made that decision quicker, but maybe that was just part of my evolution anyway. And again, let's do this in 5 years' time and I'll give you a completely different answer.
I know, I love that idea. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I think the best advice. So when I was a youngster, I used to, I started going to one dog training club and then another one and then another one. And my week was, I was basically a groupie for dog trainers. I just used to go to as many different classes as possible, to the point where I ran out of owners in England, trainers in England that I wanted to learn from. So I started going to Germany and to Belgium and learning from professional trainers over there. And a great dog trainer called Gert de Bolster in Belgium, he said to me,
a great name, Gert.
Yeah, and a great trainer. I like any opportunity that I ever get to doff my cap to him. But he used to say to me, the quickest way to train a dog is slowly. But what he meant was that is smaller criteria, smaller. I was this youngster that always want to go next. and he was always like tiny steps and then don't go back, as opposed to trying to make these big Steve Austin leaps.
Oh no, good shout out to him. I should ask you also, who's Comet?
Who's Comet? Oh, does that come up on my? I think the computer was bought from Comet, and I never bothered.
You'll never have to buy anything from them again.
I bet I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good name for a dog, though, isn't it? Good excuse.
I was so hoping, Steve, that this was going to be the story. This is the real love of my life. Was this dog called Comet? I've never forgotten him, and so I knew my Zoom.
Yeah, he was old Yeller. He was old Shep. Yeah, maybe the next one will be called Comet.
There's Blue Peter days as well. People and pets is such a fantastic way to do things. I mean, Ricky Gervais loves his animals as well, and everybody's that wonderful affinity, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, I think more people, and there should be more good dog TV stuff, because people like cooking, but people are more passionate about dogs.
Yeah.
And the amount of cookery shows and cookery books and everything else that's out there. But I think, it used to be Peter Purvis. Peter Purvis used to, at Horse of the Year show, there used to be a little agility at the end on the TV. It was always a Metropolitan Police jumping over wells with dogs. Don't know why. But that was about it. But Blue Peter, and there should be more. Even adverts and everything else. Advertising world have got into it. They know if they put a dog on a sofa, they'll sell more sofas.
I know, cool. Well, sell more toilet paper.
It doesn't. Anything and everything. You look at the Daily Mail. You look at the pension. They sell more pensions if they put a couple holding a golden retriever as opposed to just a couple.
Oh, I love this. There's a new business for it. I'll tell you what we'll do, Steve. We'll do a whole new series of these. This will be Octopus TV meets the dog man.
Exactly. This time next year.
Rodney. Absolutely. Always a thrill. Finally, then, what has been your proudest moment?
So I think, to be honest, the books, and I think the children's book really is my proudest one, because I think it's I think of the 4 books, my first one, Puppy Squeezy, is the most valuable for puppies. But I think the kids' book is the most valuable for all dogs going future. I think it's going to influence more dogs. I hope it's going to influence more dogs for the better for many years to come. So I'm very proud of the books. I'm very proud of the BBC Maestro courses that we've just done, because it's 30 lessons, it's 4 hours worth of lessons, and it is a good 30 years worth of knowledge that we've deciphered. But the product itself, that looks beautiful. It's shot by the best in the business, camera wise and director wise, and a lot of dog stuff tends to be a little bit agricultural, a little bit good enough is good enough, and it's a little dog stuff. Often when it's online or on TV, it looks a bit rainy and a bit miserable and a little bit tutty. Whereas the BBC Maestro celebrates dog ownership, and it celebrates dog training. And I'm forever grateful for those guys for having that vision to put it in a nice bright light.
And it's a great series as well, isn't it? Gary Barlow, Marco Pierre White, David Williams. It's all good stuff, isn't it?
All the big hitters.
All the big hitters, and Steve Mann
bringing up the rear.
Hey, sniffing those butts.
Absolutely. Made a career out of it, huh?
Absolutely. Well, finally then, how would you, Steve Mann, like to be remembered?
I don't need to be remembered. If I can't get it across in my 70 years that I'm going to be on this planet spinning around the universe, then someone else can have a go after me. I don't need to be remembered. I'm good.
Wonderful. Well, that's the perfect, wonderful answer. It has been such a delight. We will get you back, and next time I want to meet some of your dogs.
Okay, I'll have a word with their agent.
It sounds good. And you can take the lead.
All right, perfect. No pun.
Thank you. Steve Mann, thank you very much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Cheers now.
So thank you again to the wonderful Steve Mann for telling us just how easy it is. Easy peasy, Awesome Pawsome dog training for kids, but suitable for adults as well. What a delight to have him on the show. And if you have any suggestions or any questions you'd like to ask any of my guests, you can write to me at guests@octopustv.com. That's guests@octopustv.com. Don't forget, you can follow me at Andrew Eborn, at Octopus TV, and you can subscribe on all of the usual platforms. More platforms than Paddington. But for me, for now, thank you very much for joining me. Sit up straight, and I'll see you next time. Be good, be safe. See you then. Bye-bye.